Hey lady, welcome to the Postpartum on Purpose podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie and I'm wife to James and mom to 4 beautiful kids, ranging from 9 down to 1 with one on the way. My hope is to help other women experience postpartum as a time of grit, growth, and grace. This is episode 45. Hi lady, how are ya? As I record this, I am 2 days away from 36 weeks pregnant. Getting very close to the end here, and I wanted to share with you a couple of ways that I am preparing for postpartum in trimester number 3. The most significant way I'm preparing is by telling my boss at my managing editor job that I will not be returning after the birth of the baby. I have been working as an editor for 3 years now, a little bit over, and I have a 10-hour-a-week commitment to that. And then also homeschool my kids and do this podcast. And I just realized that I would be more stressed than excited about the work to continue to do that, if I were to continue to do that when baby number 5 is here. My last week will be the week that the baby's due, or if the baby comes a little early, whenever that happens to be. That is leading me to prepare for wrapping up a couple of different projects at work, and then also handing the reins over to the new managing editor here, hopefully in about a week or 2. After that, I am continuing to see a pelvic floor therapist and the chiropractor. I've been twice now. I went 2 weeks ago. No, that's not right. I went 3 weeks ago and then last week. And I'm guessing I'll probably go again a week from now, so about every 2 weeks. The pelvic floor therapist has been very helpful with the vulvar varicosities that I mentioned previously. She's had some great ideas and then recommended that I get the specialty order leggings from Australia, which I did, and they actually have made a difference. So if you ever need those, I hope you don't. But if you do, reach out to me because I can recommend a brand that has been very effective. Besides the vulvar varicosities, there has been a fair amount of pain that I've had as well. And I would say that the exercises from the physical therapist have been moderately helpful. They certainly have not taken the pain away, but I would classify it as more bearable or more manageable. I will plan to go probably until close to the due date to both chiropractic and pelvic floor therapy appointments. And then I will make an appointment for 6 weeks postpartum with the pelvic floor therapist who's opening her own practice. That threw me for a loop last time. She let me know that some of my appointments postpartum will actually be with a different office than they have been prenatally. I'm not sure about the chiropractor. I'm going to kind of see how that one goes. The only plan I have for sure for postpartum is pelvic floor therapy. I did have a massage right after the chiropractic appointment because they have an in-house masseuse after the most recent chiropractor appointment. I had higher expectations or hopes for how that was going to help. And I thought maybe I would incorporate that into my prenatal and maybe the postpartum period. As of right now, just based on my sample size of 1, I might try going to a different practice and just see, not necessarily a different chiropractic practice, but like a different massage place, maybe as part of a salon, and just see if that was more helpful. I would just classify it last time as kind of underwhelming, not necessarily making a big difference. Other things, house projects. I classify this pregnancy, or at least this 3rd trimester, as I'm not so much nesting as James, my husband, is nesting for me. I have had various projects that I asked him to, if possible, complete before the baby comes. Painting the whole house is not going to happen. I did recognize that. That one's not going to happen. But other things have, which has been tremendous. All of the trim in our house is finished. Some of it has been in the wings, waiting in the wings for several years. So all the trim is up, and by that I mean all the baseboard around the floors, all the trim around the windows, which you replaced last year. So that's all of that had to be redone. And then we got all new doors several years ago now. Interiorly in the house, and so he now has trim around, or casing. Is it window casing? Window casing, trim around doors, and baseboards. All just referring, right, to the same white manufactured wood product. Anyhow, it's all up. And he is in process replacing the countertops in our kitchen, which I really appreciate. That's something that needs to happen before we can move, and we are hopeful maybe we will move before the end of the year. So we'd like to get that taken care of before the baby comes, because even though he will have 4 full weeks off after the baby's birth for postpartum, for which we are both eternally grateful, there just is not the energy, right? Like, maybe there's the time because you're not at work, but there just isn't the energy with a new baby in the house. So preparing for postpartum and trimester 3 by making arrangements for the end of the job, continuing to see the pelvic floor therapist and the chiropractor, getting some house projects taken care of. I will probably be doing some nesting, but the only real nesting that I've done so far is one day we came home from a commitment outside the house, and I sat on the floor next to our dresser with all of our DVDs in it and decided that I absolutely had to go through every single DVD at that time to cull the herd, to thin the herd. Other than that, I can't think of anything really unusual or silly that I've done that's been like, this has to be taken care of before the baby can come. Don't rule it out in the next couple weeks, but so far that hasn't really hit me, that bug. Something I think a lot of people think about, and I have been thinking about it, though not necessarily doing a lot about it as well, is food during postpartum. Now, my best friend for the last 2 babies has set up incredible meal trains, and we've been really blessed, really well taken care of as far as other people preparing suppers for us. I had it in my head that I was going to do a lot of frozen food preparation in advance, and my mom has very kindly made me 2 freezer meals that are in the freezer currently. I guess that was a little redundant. But other than getting 3 books from the library out about make ahead and freeze meals, I have not in fact made ahead or frozen any meals. Now that may be in part because I have out-of-town family that will be coming out of state. Actually, my husband's family is coming next week for my son's first communion and confirmation. And I've been thinking a lot about the food that we need for that, grocery shopping, meal prepping for that. So I think actually after they have visited us, then I might have more space or bandwidth to do frozen meal prep. But so far it's really just been an idea that I have not brought to fruition yet. So we'll see how much of that actually happens. And then this is something that I do have planned. I just don't know exactly when it will happen. Is I'm going to go to Sam's Club with a friend and get some bulk buying done for, I'm not exactly sure what. I know I want to get some fun snacks for my kids to enjoy and me postpartum. And I also had it in my head that I was going to buy bulk sausage because we have sausage every single Sunday. And I was thinking it might be nice to have that in the mornings. Like if James would prepare that for me with some eggs, that would be really good, I think. Those are the only 2 things I actually have on paper as to what I'm going to buy. But I have been thinking about food postpartum. I think we'll have that reasonably well covered. I'm not really sure if I'll end up doing much of the freezer meal prep. We'll see. I never actually have before that I can think of. But I thought 5 kids, that might be good. We'll see what comes. Practical things that I'm really starting to think about right now are who's going to watch the kids during labor and the 24 hours after we give birth while we are in the hospital with baby. And then who among our grandma tribe can help us with them just on an ongoing regular basis in the first couple of weeks to give me time and space to recover without trying to manage all 5 of them at once. That being said, I've got different people that I've been talking to help in ways that are very monumental to me, but hopefully not stressful or overly demanding of them. Things like, could you please take my kids for a walk? Could you please take my kids to the park, which is a 5-minute walk from our house? Would you mind taking my kids to the library? Also a 5-minute walk from my house. That sort of thing is what I'm asking. Hopefully something, like I said, that is not demanding of them, but gives me, let's say, an hour of just break, an hour of rest. I realize with each additional child that becomes increasingly important to me. So those are things I'm dealing with. Dealing with sounds like it's a negative thing. Those are things I'm addressing right now. Who will help take care of the kids while I am in labor and in the hospital? And then who will help for the first couple of weeks after the baby is here as we're settling in and I'm recovering. I met with my doula on Monday, and that went well. It was a very bringing home to me experience that the baby is coming. I told James afterwards, there have been so many different discomforts during this pregnancy that I've really been focused, I think, on each day, and this is the thing that is difficult or challenging today. I'm not saying that's the best attitude. I'm just saying in all reality, in all frankness, that is the place that I have been in, just getting through one day at a time, most of the days. And so it was a real gift to be reminded that all of the discomfort is for a real purpose. And the real purpose is welcoming our newest family member. So it was a gift to me with the doula, but it was also a bit of a splash of cold water on my face that, hey, things are changing soon. This baby is not going to be inside my belly for the next 7 years, even though it may feel like that. And I need to be thinking very purposefully, but also with great anticipation and joy about the good that is to come. And I've mentioned this before. I think I mentioned it last episode, but it is really helpful to me to be able to chat with my younger sister, whose baby is close to 5 weeks old now, and to be reminded by her of just how much joy and excitement and blessing is ahead. Something that the doula brought was a bunch of paperwork, things like drinking red raspberry leaf tea, a reminder to do that, which is great because it's on my grocery list. And then the research on dates, using those at the end of pregnancy and how they can help both hopefully shorten labor and then actually decrease postpartum hemorrhage risk, which is a relatively new finding in research. So I'm looking forward to doing that. That's on the grocery list too for this week. So I can start that at 36 weeks on the dot. But something else she put in the paperwork was about PMADs, postpartum perinatal, so it could be pregnant or postpartum, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And there are 6 of them: postpartum anxiety, or I should say perinatal anxiety, depression, OCD, psychosis, that's the 4th one, that's the 5th one, bipolar, what's the 6th one I'm forgetting? Anyhow, there are 6 of them. I can't remember the 6th one at this moment. But I've talked before in the episode about preparing for postpartum in trimester number 2 about experiencing OCD, especially in the postpartum period with my youngest son, who is now 21 months. And so there was information in the packet that the doula gave me about PMADs. And as I was reading through it, there was a really cool screening form that you could use to communicate with an OBGYN, a midwife, whomever is doing your follow-up care postpartum, if you were experiencing any symptoms of a PMAD. So rather than having to try to say out loud, this is what I'm experiencing, if that ends up feeling very tough for you, there's a handy checklist, and you could just check off this, and this applied to me, and these are any risk factors that I might have for PMADs. But I will tell you, it absolutely triggered my OCD thoughts, my tendency to obsessive thoughts about, what have I experienced at postpartum? Oh my goodness, that would feel terrible if I were to feel out of control of my thoughts. And well, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I was grateful that I could recognize pretty quickly what that was so that I could dismiss it, knowing the appropriate response. And I talked about doing exposure and response prevention therapy in the 2nd trimester episode. I did that for 3 full months. So I met weekly with an ERP trained therapist from January to end of February. And then I spaced it out a little bit from February to, or for the month of March. And I asked him, the therapist at the last March appointment, do I need to keep doing this? I've been doing all this homework. What is the trajectory of training or continuing to work with you? And he said, you're doing really great. You know what to do. You can come as often or as little as you want. You can do a spot check if you'd like. This is totally up to you. You're doing really well. So I actually haven't been back for an in-office appointment since the end of March, and that's been really good. Now, my understanding of OCD is that you can train your brain to an extent, and you can also learn to recognize thought patterns and tendencies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those tendencies are going to go away. It means that you will learn how to roll with the punches, how to recognize what's happening, and to respond appropriately. So the need to continue exposing myself to things that I'm afraid of does not just go away at a certain point. It's not the same thing as breaking a leg and your leg is now healed. It will continue to be a tendency, most likely, for my brain to varying degrees and to a different extent over time. And big hormonal change times, like postpartum, can certainly be a time where that will be more challenging. That may very well be the case. I understand that. But it is important for me to continue to push the boundaries, so to speak, of things that frighten me or I could easily get into a thought spiral about, to continue pushing back against that tendency. So, in response to my little triggering episode on Monday with the PMAD paperwork, I went back and read the paperwork again today, and I'm going to read it again tomorrow. And I will read it every single day until I am able to not just know, but to feel is not the right word, but not just to know, but to actually respond as if they are words on a page. And if I do experience symptoms of a PMAD postpartum, I know what to do to get help. But what's necessary or what's important is not so much me trying to make plans in case that happens, but to simply say, this is what I'm experiencing. This is the triggering response that I have to these words, but it is up to me how seriously I want to take the feelings or emotions that come up when I read about this thing happening. So that's the update on ERP. I am not in active treatment for that right now, though I am always paying attention to how I can push the boundaries, push the envelope, and expand my circle of things that I am comfortable with and able to do. I also, this is all sort of connected at this point, I also reached out yesterday to administration at the hospital where I am going to give birth and where I gave birth last time. I have not heard back from her yet. I just left a voicemail, but I asked to speak to the nurse manager in advance of my labor and birth because things were rough with his birth, and I've talked about that in various episodes. I think episode 3 maybe what included my last son's birth story. But there were some things that were missed on the part of the nursing staff and the doctor, frankly, but that's not within the purview of the hospital. The doctor is not an employee of the hospital. But there were things specifically missed by the nursing staff that could have made a big difference in terms of my experience and how my son's birth went. So I'm proactively reaching out to the nurse manager for 2 reasons. One, to see what type of training, protocols, programs, education, etc., the nurses have now to be able to handle unmedicated vaginal birth, low intervention this time that maybe they didn't have 2 years ago. And then also to say, is there anything on my end that would be helpful? I have a doula. I'm hopeful my OB will be there because she should be on call that week. She should not be gone. If I give birth within a week of my due date, she should be around. I think for those reasons, I'm in pretty good shape, but I am also wanting to go in with a spirit of goodwill to say if there are things from your perspective that might be helpful for me to bring, notify, let know, etc., I am open to hearing those things. So I believe that because I have had this experience, but also have the experience of having been a nurse, I believe I have a responsibility to speak up for women who also want to have an unmedicated birth in a hospital setting, but perhaps do not have the language or the experience or the tools to go, for instance, and meet with administration themselves. So do I have to go and speak to this woman? No, I don't have to, but I believe it is important and that I am in a unique position to do that. So that is something I'm doing as well. Another thing I'm doing to prepare for postpartum during trimester 3 is to continue ramping up and teaching my kids skills. And that's all of them. Maybe not the 21-month-old. Maybe not so much with him. But with our 3-year-old, we're working on 2 things. He is in a big temper tantrum phase right now, where anytime he hears the word no, it just elicits an immediate puddle of tears, angry, yelling, not listening, temper tantrum, right? That's what a temper tantrum is. We are working very actively with him, very closely, James and I both, to curb the temper tantrums because, well, we have the energy and time to deal with them now, more or less. We'd prefer not to, but we can deal with them. I would really love for that not to be the case, for that to be starting to simmer down a little bit by the time the baby comes. Now, is that in my control ultimately? No. No, it's not. But to the extent that James and I can begin training and preparing him for healthier ways to respond to his big emotions, we are doing that. You're taking an active role in doing that right now. I'm also working on getting him to dress himself, which is an ongoing process because he cannot figure out how to get his underwear on face forward. We'll see if anything changes on that front before the baby comes. We are also getting the big kids trained on helping the little boys get dressed. So my son with the 3-year-old, my daughter with the 21-month-old, we're working on that with them. They now can take care of all the dishes stuff. They can do all of the laundry stuff except washing. I haven't really had them start any loads, but they can transfer things to the dryer, get the dryer going, fold, put away. Those things are all managed by them now. They can sweep floors. Yeah, they're in good shape. I'm very confident about what they are able to do to help with their little brothers. And of course, at the same time, making sure that they have plenty of time to play, do the things that they so enjoy doing, to be kids, but to give them age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate tasks. I'm very comfortable with where things are at with that right now. And then the last theme, I would say, of trimester 3 preparation is to begin to ramp down. I talked about this in the trimester 2 prep episode, but one of the things that is actually very difficult for me personally during postpartum is that it's actually quite slow, God willing. God willing, there are no major medical issues. There's not a lot of fast-paced, focus on this, put your attention here. There's a lot more invitation to restfulness, to be very much in the present moment, to focus on just the tiny little world of my home. Not forever, but certainly early on. And if I am not used to that in any way, because all I've been doing before birth is preparing, like my hair's on fire, then that is a very jarring shift when the baby comes. Not that I don't want to be present and focused and here and now, but if I have no practice doing that, of course it's going to be difficult, especially for somebody who, like me, tends to be a very driven, ambitious, go-getter type of girl. So ramping down in the last couple weeks, I was talking to my sister about this yesterday, is a little bit of a challenge in particular for this current situation because on the one hand, our income is going to be affected by me not working. It's going to be affected. And so I want to do as much work as I can to pad the income, so to speak. We have several different bills that I've had from the pelvic floor PT, this, that, and the other thing that we had this month. Next month, our property taxes are due. The month after that, all of our medical bills will be coming. There are things coming. There are costs coming. And so I would like to contribute as much as I can towards those things before I'm taking off a very substantial amount of time. When I do return, the freelance writing is going to be a fraction of what I have been making with the editing because it will be a lot less time. But there's going to be a significant chunk of time where I'm just off. So I want to make the money that I can right now. I want to earn but then I also want to rest. So for instance, today, what did that look like today? Today, that looked like after the little boys went down for naps after lunch, I laid down too for a while. When I got up, I worked for a couple of hours, but the nap happened first, whereas previously I just wouldn't have taken a nap. I just would have worked. So that's a little bit of the transition that's starting to happen. I'm going to be moving from 10 hours to 8 hours pretty consistently starting next week and on. And commitments in general, especially on the weekends, we are not taking on for the most part between now and when the baby comes. Sometimes we'll have one thing over the course of the whole weekend, but generally speaking, we won't be traveling. We'll have just one commitment per weekend, if any. I am doing more archery because that is an activity I talked about previously. It's an activity that really helps me to be present to the moment and for which I accomplish nothing. I don't earn anything or win anything or achieve anything by shooting archery with my husband. It is just an opportunity to be together with him and in the present moment. So the archery is going to increase in the next couple of weeks as the commitments decrease. And something that I did last time that I think was really great preparing for the baby to come, I was able to go to adoration, Eucharistic adoration, which if you're not Catholic, you can look up what that means. But we just believe that Jesus is really present in the monstrance. And so in Eucharistic adoration, the idea is just to go and sit in his presence. Just to sit there. And again, that's really good and helpful for my brain, for my personality. It's good to be there. It's good to be in his presence, but it is also good to learn to just sit still. That's what's ramping up and what's ramping down as I prepare for postpartum, this time with baby number 5 in trimester 3. I look forward to talking to you next time. Have a good week.